Okay, we're gonna coming right back in, like no, not like that, like that, like this. Hi, Gabriel. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, fantastic. All right, perfect. Um, how are you doing?
Good.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. That was fun.
This game is really, really cool. I really, really enjoyed it. So thank you for that. Um, there's some questions from the chat that I think we'll just dive right into, if that's
Yeah,
all right.
sure.
Okay, cool. From Noise Crime, question for you: how much did the game change during development and prototyping, and was there anything that you found particularly surprising during that process?
It was a weird development process because I never really knew what I was making. I just kind of would write down ideas and then try them out, and some of them would stick and some of them would get abandoned. So not having a clear picture of what the game actually was, there was not that many major changes over the course of it. It was just kind of a very organic development phase where a lot of it was kind of part-time, so it was spread out over
Sure.
long periods of time, and then I just kind of, anytime something felt like it was working, I'd stick with it. Otherwise, I just let it sit for a long time and then probably come back and take it out again.
Um, I saw in the chat earlier the development time on this was about 2.5 years. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was 2.5 years that you were working primarily just you on this game and part time while you were doing other things.
Yeah, I had a full-time job doing programming in Unity, which was nice. So I could, well, it was nice, but also more exhausting because then I'd be programming
Right.
all day. I'd go home and do more programming. But I improved my skills and knowledge, so I could, like, on the weekends I could bring it back and be like, okay, I know how to do this now, and then I kind of apply that to what I was working on. And then in January this year, my job, it seems like every job I've had, always the company just goes out of business, and then it's like freedom time for me to just work on my own stuff. So that's what I did in January, and just focused on getting the game polished up and ready to ship out on Xbox and PC.
And this released like really recently, right?
Yeah, it was September 15th, so I guess it'll be
Just
tomorrow.
like a couple weeks. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, congratulations. I mean, that's a long time coming, but I hope that it's gotten the reception that it deserves because it is a beautiful, sweet, heartfelt little game. I really, really like it.
Thanks. Yeah, I think most people who have played it so far have really kind of understood it. I was worried because it's kind of a weird, unconventional game, and I wasn't sure if people would understand what I was going for, or if it would just kind of get swept under the rug. But I think that the reception so far has been very positive, and I'm hoping that once I get it on PlayStation as well, then there'll be kind of more exposure to more people.
Yeah, and when does the PlayStation happen?
That'll hopefully be January or February next year. I'm just getting started on that soon.
Um, well, that's great. That sounds fantastic. Yeah, I mean it handles really well with the controller. Is it controller only? I didn't actually try it without a
There
controller plugged
was
in.
there was keyboard controls, but I'm not a PC gamer myself, so I don't
Right.
actually know what proper PC controls are. And I know a lot of people. I've seen videos of people playing with keyboard, and they're kind of like, "Well, this doesn't make sense." And so I'm releasing an update probably tomorrow that will add in mouse support, which I pulled at one point because it wasn't quite working. But hopefully I can tune it and get it working so people are more happy with the keyboard controls.
Interesting. I mean, one of the things that's really interesting about that to me is how much the there is a sense of being out of control for a lot of the game for sort of all of the planet sections, um, that I can see like being a little bit forgiving if the control scheme isn't super precise, but at the same time, I can imagine that would cause real problems if people if the controls weren't, if they had trouble sort of associating their control scheme with what was happening on the screen. So I can see how that'd be a problem.
Yeah, the keyboard or the controller definitely feels way better, but I think that people are more forgiving of the keyboard controls because it is kind of a weird, unconventional game, and it works with some of the ideas that are already there with the clumsiness and stuff. So I don't think anyone's really held it against the game too hard.
Cool. Well, that's very cool. Noise Crime had another question. What was the inspiration or initial spark for making this game? The combination of baby robot, procedural generation, comic book, sci-fi elements. Where did sort of those different elements come from?
It was again like kind of a gradual process, but the original concept for the game was going to be a 2D mobile game, kind of like an Angry Birds type thing.
Sure.
It was going to be these small little towns that needed you to help people, and the controls were going to be so sensitive and all physics based. So anytime you tried to do something, you just crush all the buildings, and there wouldn't actually be a fail state. It would just be like mission over, and then you just fly to a new planet and start a new level until you basically destroyed every planet in the universe. And that idea was always kind of a joke. But then once I moved it into 3D, I wanted to focus on the sound and the visuals as well. So creating that like Boards of Canada kind of sound was influence. And then for the visuals, I played around with it for a long time, but I always knew that I wanted to do something that was really bright and vibrant and not something you see normally in games. And once I prototyped some visuals, and they reminded me of comic books. And then after that, I just kind of kept pushing into the comic book direction because it felt like it was really working well.
I think it does work really well, and there's because it creates, I think the interface being so strongly comic booked really reinforces that sort of like toon shader visual, which seems really reminiscent to me of I'm not like a big comic books person, but like a lot of graphic novels that I've seen that are very like stylized in that way, and it's a beautiful visual aesthetic that I feel like is given is really kind of given a additional meaning or reinforced by sort of some of the comic book styles. Yeah, very cool. All right, here's another question from Eve. How's the game made better by the presence of achievements? For example, what patterns do you see in the achievements that people get? Do you use them to measure progress of other types of behaviors? So I'm reading sort of two questions here, I guess. And one of them would be, like, just from a design perspective, how do you view achievements as part of the overall design of the game? And then secondly, like, achievements give you access to a set of metrics, and do you use those? Do you find them useful?
The achievements were kind of a late thing that came in, because it wasn't until I started actually working on the Xbox that I was like, okay, I need to add these achievements. And
right.
There were some that were obvious, and then some that were kind of like, okay, I can make this an achievement. And it never felt like it was an important part of the game too much. Like, I know that there are people who are really into achievements, but the game is so simple anyways, and it's not meant to be challenging in most ways. Like, the flying through the hoops is probably the most challenging part of the game.
Yeah.
I
Yes.
was surprised to see people getting that achievement right away. Like, they were just like, okay, I have to do this because it's an achievement. Right. And I think if I hadn't attached an achievement to that, then there'd probably be way less people who actually went for it, which is interesting. It's kind of funny how you can force people to do things that aren't necessarily...
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Because you think that behavior is at least partially driven by people who are looking at all of the achievements and seeing that there is one for flying through the rings, and then they go out and do that.
Yeah, exactly. You can like kind of lead people into things that they might not try otherwise. I think that's really the real benefit of having achievements for a game, is being able to push people to try features that they might not have tried, or go places that they never went before.
No, absolutely. Although I have to say that there's something really nice and this game I think does it really well. Where for me, the first time that I play a game, certainly I don't look at the achievements ahead of time. I'll
Yeah.
sometimes look at them, after I've played a little bit. But uh, having them exist and sort of pop up in order to, like, as a response to doing something that isn't really meaningful within the larger structure of the game, but giving me as a player feedback that the game has recognized that I did something, that I
Yeah.
flew into the sun.
Yeah.
Um, that's I think that there is something really cool about achievements and achievement system in that way too.
Yeah. For sure. I love it when I'm playing a game and you do something that is funny to you, like it might make you laugh, just the thing that happened,
Sure.
and then the game is like, yeah, we saw you do that. You know,
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
picking at you a little bit.
Uh And what about the metro? I haven't actually gotten a chance to talk to a lot of people who have implemented achievements in games about the metrics. Is that something that you've had a chance to look at in the last couple of weeks and
I
see?
haven't actually looked into any of them yet.
Yeah,
Um, Most of it's pretty straightforward, so there's not a lot of stuff that I'd be surprised by, I guess. Although I am kind of curious because, like, if you keep playing the game, then there is more stuff, and I'm not sure how many people continue to play to find the extra stuff. So
right.
I probably will check it at some point, and it'll be interesting to see. But I also don't know. I know with Xbox, I think you have to opt in to have your achievements tracked, whereas maybe Steam is automatic.
Oh, I didn't even realize that. Okay, well, that makes sense. Um, interesting. Interesting. Are you in playtesting this game? That sort of that well, it's not the final decision, I guess, depending on what decision you make, but that end of main storyline decision. Do you see a lot of variation in how players approach that?
Well, there's only really the two choices, so it's
Yeah.
not. But most videos that I've watched of people playing the game, this is actually the first time I've ever seen anyone choose that.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh, good for me.
which is fun 'cause
Interesting. Interesting.
I think it's the more interesting ending because it is kind of like, I know I should just do this, and like for me that kind of ending, even though it's basically at the end of the game, like Bastion is another one that I think of where it's at the very end of the game and then it presents you with a choice and it doesn't impact the story at all at that point, but it's basically a way to focus you back on everything that's happened and then reflect on it. And I think that's really cool because you do take some time and just think about what you think is the right choice.
Yeah, yeah. I really appreciate that there is a choice there, and honestly, I appreciate that there's uh there's the option to sort of continue with the game. And obviously, I haven't seen what happens after if you choose the A choice. But I get the impression that at least there's the ability to continue sort of exploring the universe. And the universe is just by its nature sort of a beautiful thing to be in, the way that it's created. So there's something kind of hopeful about that you can be really cynical and pessimistic about the nature of your own existence and whether or not you should go on. But if you do, there is more to see.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Um. So we talked about the production cycle of this game being about 2.5 years. Is that sort of? I have a question about how long did the full concept to core completion of the game take? So I guess what subsection of that was sort of after you had sort of solidified what the idea of the game was to the first playable version of something that might be recognizable today as Jettomero.
Right. It's probably in September of last year so basically a year ago when I kind of locked down a bunch of stuff and had a demo that you could actually play and get a sense of what the game was trying to do for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
There were also some things that I was still thinking about repping out, and some other very important things that came in later that kind of shifted the focus. And like the fuel mechanic, that was something that came in very late, based on recommendations from some friends who were playtesting it.
And where did that come from? Like, what was the intention behind that?
It was another reason to explore the planets.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that people. I mean, it also adds to the thing when you're flying in space too, and you don't want to get your fuel stolen by those electricity clouds. So then
Yeah.
it was another reason. The fuel worked well to motivate a few different
Yeah.
gameplay mechanics.
Yeah, no, I see it as a really elegant solution to just as a very light layer on top of the core gameplay. Because the other thing that it motivates is moving through populated areas, which you might otherwise, try harder to avoid doing.
Yeah.
It's cool. I mean, I always love when you find such a simple element, that it doesn't add a lot of complexity to the game, but it sort of solves a number of different problems.
And there's also the asteroids in space, which are kind of scattered everywhere. And if you crash into an asteroid, that'll actually give you fuel too. Which there is an achievement for hitting 25 asteroids. So that's why I think some people discover it because of that. But you can basically collect all the fuel you need just by flying around in space too.
Did I ever manage to crash into an asteroid? Did you see? I'm not sure that I was aware of that.
There's also the comets that are flying around, and if you hit one of those, it'll fill you up completely with fuel.
Oh, wow. I do. I mean, I feel like I did at least at some point at the beginning see an asteroid or a comet or something, but I don't know if I managed to collide with it. It seems like well, maybe I was just like on a track. I was pretty like, especially in the second half, I wanted to get through the main storyline, and I felt like I could do it. So I was pretty like gung-ho about hitting the next planet. I didn't spend a lot of time flying around the solar system, which I feel like I could have, just because it was small enough that it was easy to travel around, and it was fun to just like zoom around with those pathing lines.
Mm-hmm.
It's really it felt nice to just fly around space. Okay. So a question about graphics and accessibility, and specifically, I guess, color blindness. Have you received any feedback about the graphics in terms of accessibility, and did you take that into account at all when you were developing the game?
No one has brought it up with me. I think the audience right now is still too small to have reached kind of that point where anyone's going to mention it, but it's not actually something that I had considered. Although I'm putting out an update probably tomorrow that lets you change the filters, so it'll have a black and white mode, and basically you can shift the hues and stuff and all that kind of thing, which is kind of unintentionally maybe a solution for color blindness or
Sure.
accessibility options.
I mean, it's interesting because I wasn't really thinking about it while I was playing, but the game has a lot of really bold, sharp. It feels like there's a lot of high contrast in the way that the shaders sort of render the scene. Which I would think would make it easier to see under different circumstances. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so there's a really interesting question that just came in from Endersword, saying, in a game like this, it seems like you could easily triple the length of a storyline playthrough or cut it in half, which is maybe an arguable assumption in the first place. But regardless, what made you decide on this length? What made this feel like it was the right length for this game?
I did play around with the length. Originally, it was going to be a monster on basically every planet, and you had to beat 3 of them, I think, to unlock a section of the story. But then it wasn't fun fighting that many monsters, so I reduced it to every time you beat a monster, you get a story chunk, and it happens once every solar system. And then the story was 15 chapters until kind of like 2 months before I finished the game, and one of my friends played the game and he was like, it's kind of long, and I realized, like, yeah, there's no reason why it needs to be 15 chapters, and cutting it down to 9, basically removing like 2/5 of it, was I think a really positive move, because everything that gets communicated can kind of be condensed into those chapters, and there's still the twists kind of every 3 chapters where you find out something new that's important. About that length.
No, the length felt really good to me. I like that. Those seemed like good changes. And I felt like the text of the story was really well balanced. Like there was quite a bit of it, and it took me through a bunch of twists and turns. But every new piece of memory that I got felt really significant. Felt like it added a lot to my understanding of what was going on, which felt really good. And I just, to reinforce, I think, the decisions that you made, I feel really good about the feedback of getting one of those every time I completed a monster battle. Not having too many of those monster battles. The monster battles were stressful, and it sort of created a nice staccato with a lot of the rest of the game, where I feel like there are very few consequences for anything that I could do, and or at least mechanically, like I'm trying to maneuver around, and I'm trying to walk, and it's not always easy to do, or I'm just flying through space, and it's kind of like beautiful and relaxing, and I'm drawn to the monsters because I know that they will help unlock my memories, but they're also like it is by far the most like stressful part of playing the game, or at least that's what I found.
Yeah, there's the easy mode that it mentions, which is basically there's no timer at all. You just need to push the buttons.
Got it.
And the conflict with the monsters, that was one thing that was kind of up in the air for a very long time. Like, I wasn't sure how those interactions were going to play out. And I realized I needed the monsters for the story, but I wasn't sure how you'd defeat them or anything. And I think that I just wanted something that would implicate you in, like, actively wanting to destroy them instead of just incidentally happen like the rest of the game, because the monsters is kind of where Jettomero feels like its attention is best directed, but so then you feel more responsibility for kind of being very active behind that behavior.
Jettomero has some great, like, heroic patter every time it encounters a monster. Like, that is definitely when I feel the most, if not actually heroic, at least like I'm trying to be heroic, like an attempt at heroism. Yeah.
Sorry. No, I just like how that's kind of where people rally behind Jettomero. Like, the rest of the time they know they're breaking stuff, but then they get to the monster, they're like, okay, now I'm actually doing some good.
I feel like I did actually do some good, though. I like put out some fires, and at one point I like cleared up a thunderstorm. It seemed like there was only one opportunity for me to do that. Was it intentional for you to put some things in that allowed me to feel like I really did do some good, even if it was At least, I'm not sure if the fire was a natural fire that I was really helping with, or if that was something that I had sort of accidentally caused and then was at least like helping to put out.
Yeah, there were a few interactions like that that I added further to the end of the game or to the end of the development process, and they were kind of more designed to be things that you could feel like you might have helped with, but ultimately you're just destroying things more.
It's
like
true.
Your only ability to do anything is through destruction, like you are. And the thunderstorm, actually, if you walk into it, if it's close to buildings, then it's going to blow up all the buildings in proximity as well.
Got it.
Basically, everything you do, like stomping the forest fire, you're ripping out all the trees from the ground. Like
right.
you're constantly, even when you are doing something that might be seen as productive, it's still destruction.
Well, and the thunderstorm inspired me then on every subsequent planet that I saw a like cluster of clouds to go up and like swing my arms around to try to chase it away. And I must have killed a lot of people doing that just sort of uselessly, trying to chase that dragon of some little modicum of heroism from my past. Yeah, interesting. Okay, couple of just sort of fun questions. Andersword has another one. If Jettomero was to fight Batman, who would win?
Well, Jettomero is indestructible, so Batman might be able to tie Jettomero down for a while, but I don't see how Batman could destroy Jettomero. I think Jettomero...
Yeah, Jettomero's pretty tough. It'd be pretty tough even for Batman, I feel like.
Takes a lot of spells.
And Batman's whole shtick, I guess, is that in the beating impossible odds, he's a detective and he prepares well and sort of knows his enemy's weakness. I feel like Batman, maybe if you were really going to do this, Batman would figure out a way to play on Jettomero's insecurities. And if he could figure out how to communicate with Jettomero, he could convince it to exile itself. Is pretty much the only way that would work out.
Yeah, I think that's what Batman would end up doing. Either convince Jettomero to leave and never come back, or make Jettomero so sad that Jettomero blows itself up.
Right, exactly. The only way to beat Jettomero. I mean, there is something I do really like that about this game. There's something really cool about in a game that is full of violence and full of actors who are literally actively attacking you, as well as environmental dangers. There's nothing that can actually hurt you, and there's nothing that can destroy Jettomero unless it sort of does it to itself.
Yeah, I think that was fun both thematically because it's more interesting to have someone who the problems that fall on them are not going to be to their own self. It's going to be to the people that they're trying to protect or against their goals. But also, I think I get frustrated playing some games that are really fun to play or beautiful to look at, but you're dying constantly and you get stuck and you can't move forward. And so making a protagonist that couldn't actually be destroyed was kind of a solution for that too, so that anyone could play the game and there was never a barrier for people who wanted to just experience it.
Yeah, no, that's really nice. Okay, so and then we got one more question, which is sort of this is a staple, or at least based on a staple for the play-by-play show and the chat, which is pretty much every game that we play, we ask the question, would this game be better if it had dragons in it? On the assumption that pretty much every game would be better if it had dragons in it. Jettomero is an interesting one because I think really arguably it's got dragons in it. It's got these sort of giant monsters that essentially breathe fire and defend kingdoms from invaders.
Yeah.
So Eve's question along those lines is Jettomero a dragon? in the sense that we often use it, a creature that is there to break all of the rules of the story. And that's a sort of a metaphorical dragon that we deploy frequently in games where literal dragons maybe don't make a lot of sense. In this case, it's really interesting because Jettomero behaves unlike anything else in the universe that we see. Even the sort of ultimate alien enemy from the beginning of the flashbacks ends up being defeated. Is totally, and it turns out to be like vulnerable to something, but Jettomero isn't. Jettomero sort of I guess there's a question. I guess the question here is like, to what extent is Jettomero sort of an anomaly within the universe that this game creates? And since I have you here as the designer of the game, as the creator of the story, to what extent do you view Jettomero as an anomaly?
That's a good question. I think Jettomero is kind of helpless when it comes to the plot. Like, it's just kind of moving through this storyline and can't really do anything else. Like, this is the goal it's set out, and it decides this is what I have to do, and then regardless of what kind of hints pop up, it's still going to do it. And it's basically stuck in this doomed situation. So I'm not sure whether it's an anomaly or if it's kind of the very straightforward thing that's driving this, or pulled by the story.
I mean, and part of this, I guess, is that, you know, this game has dragons in it effectively, and Jettomero is the one who fights the dragons, which sort of puts Jettomero in the role of a knight, right? Like, if we're going to take that metaphor further, Jettomero is the sort of armor-clad warrior who bravely rides up and fights the dragons, which like tracks really well. Jettomero presents this extremely heroic, if narrow-sighted kind of view of itself and what it's doing and what it wants, and is, at least in its own view and its sort of understanding of the universe, it's the only one who's capable of defeating the dragons and saving the day. And I think there's something really interesting about that, about the idea of the hero. I think that, you know, Jettomero's invulnerability is maybe less an artifact of it being sort of anomalous within the universe, and more just because it is the hero of its own story. And this game strikes me as a lot about trying to take a world that we don't necessarily completely understand and turn it into a story that we can tell ourselves comfortably.
Mm-hmm.
I did not give you a lot to respond to there. I apologize for that. That was just me sort of like thinking about dragons and knights and robots in space for a minute. Okay, all right. Better question, and I will leave this one to you. Is Jettomero Don Quixote?
Yes, I think that comparison came up from someone else as well a while ago, and I was joking about adding some windmills into the game, which I still do because I forgot about that. But I think that's basically a great comparison of someone who has created this universe. They've created a story around the world they live in to kind of justify their actions, whether or not. Like, I'm not. I remember reading about Don Quixote when that comparison came up, but I can't remember. But I definitely think that's a good comparison.
I love that imagery. I think that it really does capture some of the same ideas. Well, that's very cool. Gabriel, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Thank you for creating this game. I really, really had a great time playing it. And I had a fantastic time talking with you. This was really lovely, and I appreciate you taking the time to do it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. That was a lot of fun.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, I'm going to let you go and just close out, I think, the show.
Okay.
So unless there's anything that you would like to say to wrap up?
Just thanks to everyone in the chat. It was fun answering questions and talking, and yeah, thanks for having me on the show.
Thank you so much. I really, really enjoyed it. And it was great to have you. All right, well, I hope you have a great night.
Okay, thanks, you too.
Okay, thank you. And then I don't have a lot. I just want to say thank you everybody for watching the show. I really appreciate it, and special shout out to everybody who has subscribed to this channel on Twitch. I really appreciate you supporting the channel and the community, and if you want to get more involved in the community, be sure to check out the forum, which is linked on the page below, the Discord channel, the Steam group, and also don't forget that you can catch up on old episodes of Play by Play on YouTube. And if you're watching this on YouTube on the VOD, let us know what you thought by clicking that thumbs up or thumbs down, and leave a comment if you have something to say, or if you have another question that you want to pose. Next week, Thursday, is the start of Indiecade, and was gonna do something special for that, but I have not planned anything yet, so we are gonna see what the heck happens, but might do something Indiecade themed in some way or another. And this coming Monday, as you may know, we're going to be playing Nancy Drew on Mostly Walking, and I am super excited about that. That's going to be a lot of fun. And then the week after that, on Monday, there's not going to be a Mostly Walking. So I don't have solid plans. We're going to try to figure it out. If I can manage to put something together and do like an extra play-by-play on Monday night instead of Mostly Walking, then I'll try to do that. Otherwise, I'm just going to desperately try to catch up on my lesson planning. So that is it from me. We will... don't forget, there are only a couple of days left in September. If you were thinking about subscribing to this channel, if you'd like to support me and the folks who help put all of this together and keep it running, that's a fantastic way to do it, is to subscribe on Twitch, and you get access to our cute little dragon question mark emote. But September, half off subscriptions on Twitch only last for a couple more days, so don't delay on that. And thank you to more lemon curd for subscribing tonight. Appreciate it very much. And to Valiant Venture for the big cheer, 1,000-bit cheer. I really appreciate the support from both of you, and from everybody who's subscribed and supported this channel. It's really it means a lot to me, and to all of us. Okay, that's it. I'm gonna go home. I'm gonna get some sleep. I'm gonna make some slides for tomorrow morning, and I will see you all on Monday. Have a fantastic weekend. Good night.